Hey everyone, welcome back to When Creatives Thrive, a Create Baltimore podcast. I'm your host, Stuart Rustin. Before we get going, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us to continue telling creative stories. On this week's episode, we feature Alanah Nichole Davis, a Bronx-born, Baltimore-raised writer, cultural strategist, and social designer whose work bridges storytelling, civic imagination, and community care. She's built a legacy of using creativity and empathy to connect people, nurture ideas, and reimagine what's possible for her city. Her essays, talks, and public projects often explore the intersection of race, womanhood, technology, and belonging, inviting audiences to see Baltimore not just as a place, but as a living story. Beyond her role in city government, where she serves as the Chief Storyteller in the Mayor's Office of Innovation, Alanah's influence extends through the arts, journalism, and social advocacy, where she's helped amplify voices and shape spaces that honor authenticity and joy. A proud graduate of the Maryland Institute College of Art's Masters of Social Design program, she continues to mentor emerging changemakers and collaborate with artists, institutions, and neighborhoods invested in Baltimore's collective future. Alanah, welcome to When Creatives Thrive. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Stuart.
Of course. So first, tell us about yourself and your background. How do you go from spoken word to storytelling in city government?
Yeah. Wow. Divorce is such a funny thing, you know? I think for me, it starts in a really personal place.
Really?
It does. I was living this life, a previous life, and I was married and living in Howthorpe, which is like Baltimore County. And I had kids that went to like the preschool that was like across the street, and we had a fence, and I would ride my bike to work. I was working in an emergency room at St. Agnes, and it was a different life. And I knew that I wanted to be in a different place. I had always been a creative. I was always that kid that was filling up composition notebooks and writing and performing. I'm originally from New York, but grew up in Baltimore. So my mother was always very adamant about arts and creativity as a part of just my repertoire of skills. It had always been in my tool belt, but what I'll say is I put it away because it wasn't cool to like carry a cello uphill from your elementary school and like middle school. It gets to a point.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I've got to change.
Yeah.
I got married super early though. And I tell that part of the story because I think a lot of people do the thing that we think we're supposed to do. We try to fit the bill. We try to do the thing the way that it's sort of told to us through media, through our families, through our traditions. And I wanted new tradition for myself. And I knew that that was going to come by way of storytelling. I knew that poetry was something that I wanted to pursue because of the way it made me feel when I was a patron of it, when I would just go to an open mic and I would listen to the words that people were saying, and it made me feel free. And for the first time, I felt very seen by something, a craft that I knew I wanted to be a part of. So I started an open mic in 2015. And that carried me into a lot of spaces and with a lot of people in Baltimore City who, like me, wanted to express themselves and wanted to feel seen and maybe had to depart from something like a marriage or like a thing that's holding you back from your creativity and divorce those things and become a new person. And so poetry took me into consulting for a lot of people in Baltimore City about storytelling in the nonprofit space. And the nonprofit space sort of carried me into a whole lot of other things. And somehow I stumbled into city government, but not in a haphazard way, in a really intentional way. I think it's important that we understand that the people who are in the DIY space and the do-it-yourself space of creative arts are the people who dictate what should happen at the levels of city government. It's those voices that matter the most.
Well, tell us about your role and what do you take into consideration as you continue your work in city government?
Yeah, so I have the pleasure of, serving Mayor Brandon Scott and the people of Baltimore as the Chief Storyteller in the Mayor's Office of Innovation. It's a new role. It's the first time it's ever existed, which is a scary thing, but also a really awesome thing that our city sees creativity as a major part of industry. It moves us. It's a big part of the ecosystem. It's a role that's meant to sort of bring light to the Office of Innovation, which works to amplify issues and solve issues around vacant housing and public safety and a slew of other things. Right now, my boss, his name is Terrence Smith. He's from Mobile, Alabama, a transplant like I am, falls in love with the city. He's probably out somewhere right now getting clear boards for a new pilot that they're working on to sort of cover vacant houses with clear boards instead of those wooden boards we typically see.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you're getting an exclusive, but I think it's a fun project, and those are the kinds of things I get to tell stories about. But everything in between, what does it look like to have a team within city government that's building trust with a city that doesn't always trust it the best?
Right.
And for good reason, right? We have so many things in our history that tell us we shouldn't, and healthy cynicism is a thing. So, yeah, that's a little bit about the role, a little bit about what I get to do as the chief storyteller in the Mayor's Office of Innovation.
And what kind of intention do you bring to it? Because you clearly have a history and a long body of work that speaks to your personal point of view, but is there a different kind of approach when you go into it knowing that there's a responsibility to honor the story of a place and a large body of people?
There is a huge amount of responsibility and intention that goes into that. It's something I wake up thinking about most days.
I'm sure.
It's something I sort of wonder as I'm collaborating with people, if they can see it on me. Like, do you see how stressed I am about getting this right?
Yeah.
About making sure that everybody's included, about making sure that the narrative of Baltimore City has a chance to breathe, you know? I think that when we talk about narrative building and we talk about the strengths of storytelling, it's really an opportunity to just sort of be a window. Like, it's not necessary. And I was watching a clip this morning from a sports podcast, which somehow I'm into, even though I am not a sports fan, like not in the way people would think I am. I show up at games because it's a social, like, it's like a social chip.
Yeah.
People like when you go to O's games, people like when you go to Ravens games. And somehow I've gotten into the sports podcast thing, and I was talking about journalistic integrity.
Yeah.
And the importance of not getting too into the fold of what you're telling stories about, right? And it's interesting because I have so many friends now who, I'm a journalist by trade, who are in city government, or they're a part of these festivals, or they're producing events, or they're on the floor when bills are being introduced, and you get to sort of be shoulder to shoulder to them. But what does it look like to tell those stories from an unbiased place when those are now your friends?
Yeah.
Right?
It's a balance.
Yeah. It's a balance. It's a true balance. The reporter that was talking about it, I guess he was like friends with some of the baseball players back in the 90s when he found out that steroids were a part of their practice.
Yeah.
And like, he was like,
do?
what do you do?
Right. What do you do?
So it is a really interesting responsibility to be a storyteller in the throes of city government. And there's a responsibility to the people to tell the truth about what's happening, right? As a journalist. And then also there's a responsibility to the city that you're working with to tell the stories that matter from city government's angle.
True.
Because it's also like, there's so many wonderful things that city government does that people don't know that city government does.
Yeah.
It's kind of like there's a cloak. You come in and there are these offices, whether you're in City Hall or you're working in like a satellite location, nobody really knows what happens when you're working a government job. We know like things like, okay, it'll make the news if you're furloughed, right? Yeah. Unfortunately, like a lot of our friends in the federal level right now. But the mundane things you do every day, nobody has real visibility into that. And I think that's why storytelling is important when it comes to city government and it comes to building trust between city residents and city government and the people who work in it.
Well, storytelling is such a human thing. And I think if you can demonstrate the way that we're making connections, especially in the age of social media, but like real connections, like that's a value add to any local government.
Yeah. Yeah, I think every city should have somebody like an Alanah or a storyteller or videographer or a photographer or a note taker.
Yeah.
It can look like a number of things. I think there's so many ways you can go about it. Do I think poetry would be the effective way to tell a story? Maybe. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's so many different ways you can go about it. And it's interesting because I don't think people play with it as much as they could. It's kind of tricky because we are so fashioned to think of storytelling from city government as like expose style media. When you think about the way certain networks might cover city government, the way they'll go after a mayor like a Brandon Scott, somebody who's Black, someone who's more radical in their thinking. And when I say radical, I just mean, oh, youth should have rec centers. Like,
I think there's more radical than that.
That's what I think too. But there's some people who would go against the grain and say, this is the most absurd administration to have so many alumni from HBCUs and to have so many people who are so close and grew up in the same neighborhoods working in one administration. People question that kind of a thing. People question that kind of a thing and that kind of an ethic, what it looks like to serve a city you come from.
Yeah.
To come from a neighborhood like Park Heights, like Brandon Scott does, and to become the mayor.
Yeah.
To throw a festival like a Charm City Live and to meet your wife and then start a family because you met her at that festival. Like, it's all very close, but it's also like, what a beautiful story, right? What a beautiful thing. Like, and it's not just him because he's the mayor, it's everything.
Yeah.
It's going to a brewery with your friends and being shoulder to shoulder with people that you see only on social media and being able to have that conversation about what you think city government should be doing. And like, you go home and debrief about it. It's just the little things. There's so many little stories that are interwoven into our lives in Baltimore City that have to do with city government and don't. And I think all of it's very beautiful, just from an artistic perspective. I think we have an opportunity, all of us, to be storytellers. I think we all have an opportunity to use our voices to voice what matters to us. And we should use that more. And I think if there's anything that comes from this era of, pun intended, podcasts and social media commentary, is that you can say whatever you want.
Yeah.
There might be repercussion for that. There might be some punishment for what you're saying because we also live in the era of cancel culture, which I have so much to say about, and we'll save that for another time. But like, I think it's important that we all feel empowered.
One of the things I like to think about and talk about with artists is sustainability, this idea of how do we keep doing the thing that we're doing? How do you personally sustain yourself knowing that not only are people in public looking at you, but as you said earlier, sometimes there's this balance between coworkers, connections, and then also staying true to yourself.
Yeah. I think that's truly where being an artist comes in real handy, because most artists have like a statement or an ethos that you sort of work from. And for me, that's always been that kindness is really like an important thing. Gathering people is a really important thing. That being honest is a really important thing. So like, I think it becomes easier when I think about the fact that I stay true to those things and that I don't deviate from that. That my artistic practice, whether it's in storytelling or it's with printmaking or it's with anything else, is very rooted in the fact that I'm just looking at things and expressing things the way that I see them. And not everybody's going to agree with that.
Yeah.
There are so many times I've been to a museum. We're so blessed in Baltimore to have like a number of museums and like art, and like we've got an exhibit with like Amy Sherald and Sublime, and it's, you know.
Isn't that incredible?
It's incredible, right? But there's sometimes like where you see a piece of art and it just doesn't resonate with you.
Yeah.
And that's how I see it when people disagree with my storytelling. Is it's just a piece of art that they don't necessarily get, or that maybe they're not, you know, that it might not be purposed toward them, and that's okay. Even when we talk about creators and, you know, streamers, everybody has an audience. Some people watch Kai Cenat. I don't necessarily tune in every time. I see the clips, but that might not be my cup of tea, even if it is the most popular thing. And the most popular thing isn't always the most honest thing either. There's a wayfinding that has to happen for people in a city, in a world that is telling so many stories all the time. You can open up your phone right now and in 60 seconds, you could see 7 different ways to fry an egg.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You could see 8 different museums that are hot this month. You could see whatever you want to see. And I think there's a friend of mine, her name is Juju, and she studies African spirituality. And she has this book, the Book of Juju, and it talks about if you want to see, you can see. That's the thing is like especially like with like metaphysical things. If you want to see those things, you can see them. If you want to believe in magic, you can believe in magic. If you want to see storytelling, real storytelling, you can see real stories. If you want to see stories about imaginary creatures, you can do that.
Yeah.
If you want to read stories about real people in real cities, you can follow me.
What about self-care? Do you consider that to be an important part of your practice as well? Because I think, like you're saying, everybody has a right to their own opinion, but some people go about it in a respectful way and other people don't. So when you see the comments, when you get a DM, like, what do you make sure you're doing to make sure that you can keep doing the work?
Mm-hmm. That's such a hard question because it's such a hard practice. Because I was such a young mother, I started having children at 20. There was always a part of me that was running from what it looked like to be a, quote, mother, right? And when I say that, and I'm saying this on like a creative podcast because I think it matters, especially for women and people who just have children or are raising a gaggle of kids that are not your own, like you're a city schools teacher or whatever that is, because it's so tricky. They sort of show you through media that motherhood, that parenthood looks one way.
Yeah.
And that creative personship looks another way. And that those two things are so different. And that there's not creativity in parenthood, that there's monotony in it. That there's like you go home, you do this thing, you be a good wife, you be a good mother, you make the dinner, you make lemon squares, you do the thing. And there's there's a notion that you shouldn't deviate from that. And that anything that deviates from that makes you a bad parent, makes you a bad mother. And I think I did a lot of warring with myself in my early 20s, in my mid to late 20s, and even still in getting into my mid 30s. My birthday is in October. And I think about it a lot, like what it looked like to sort of reimagine that for myself and how much of reimagining things for yourself is self-care. Retooling the narrative around what it is you learned was right and wrong, and reparenting yourself and saying, I'm not a bad mother for wanting to be at an open mic at 8 p.m. because that's going to grow my career and put me on a trajectory to take care of my family in a better way in 10 years.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that those are all really important things to consider, especially for somebody who's a parent. And I agree, like, how can you love someone else if you're not, first loving yourself? So, Alanah, I know you've had experience working on multiple boards with organizations throughout Baltimore City. What is it like to be on a board, and why be on a board?
Yeah. Boards are such an important muscle in the body of arts and creativity in every sector in Baltimore City. I started out on a board that had to do with trees. My first board was Baltimore Orchard Project. And it was a board that was passionate about stewarding orchards in Baltimore City. And that was very straightforward. And I became a part of it because I was the host for many years of a festival called the Fruit Tree Fair that Baltimore City's Recreation and Parks would put on, and Tree Baltimore and a number of other tree-loving organizations in Baltimore City. And it was a way for me at the time to sort of meld my arts and creativity with other sort of passions. And that is a lesson that is super important, is that arts and culture can always tie with these other things. And sometimes the other things are trees, and sometimes the other things are these administrative tasks like joining a board, getting on a meeting in the evenings on a random Thursday at 6 p.m. with 12 other people that care about the mission of this organization that you're going to be on the board of. And even though that was my first one, it wasn't my last one. I had joined probably an upwards of 10 to 12 boards between the years of 2016 to 2024.
Really?
I did. And a lot of them were arts and culture driven. Some weren't, and some were. But it was important to have a creative mind in those rooms.
Right.
To have someone who thinks about the artists and the ecosystem and what it looks like to pay artists to do these other things. There are people that are looking for murals. There are people that are looking for festival hosts. There are people that are looking to just hire creative people, and they're all over the city. And I think board stewardship and the stewardship of organizations that are mission driven is so important, and something that all creatives should consider themselves a part of the culture of.
Right.
We have to tie ourselves into the fabric of the way organizations and institutions work in Baltimore City. I had the opportunity to serve on the board of the Pennsylvania Avenue Black Arts District, which is the first very specifically Black designated arts district in Baltimore City. This one was so close to my heart because I watched Lady Breon, who currently serves as our state poet laureate. She was designated by Governor Moore in 2025. To serve in that role, but she's also the founder of the Black Arts District, and she's a poet. And I grew up in that poetry era watching her, blow people away at open mics with her voice and her gravity and her words. It's powerful.
Yeah.
Okay? And I also watched her with a clipboard walk around the city, get the names and signatures she needed to get the designation for that arts district. And I was one of the signees. I had an opportunity to watch her build that brick by brick. And then when it came time and she was looking for board members, my hand was raised.
Right.
Because I know how important it is to steward arts in Baltimore City, to make sure that especially Black artists who are often overlooked in the corners of the city that don't often get seen. These are the people who you don't see at the major festivals. These are the people you don't see on the bills of shows at institutions and pubs around Baltimore City. These are the people that you usually overlook. These are the people who don't get funded. These are the people who get underfunded and over-mentored. These are the people who I wanted to make sure I had a say in what happened with them and for them in that district. So I was so pleased to spend that time on that board. That, and I'm an emeritus board member of Charm Voices of Baltimore Youth, another amazing organization using storytelling, using text and words to help Baltimore City school students find power in their words, getting them published. There's a magazine, there's a publication, it comes out multiple times a year. They're in classrooms, they're working with teachers to get publications. They're working with restaurants like Ekibin. They're working with black sauce biscuits. I call it black sauce biscuits because I like the biscuits, but it's really just black sauce kitchen. They're working with these restaurants to teach them about food writing. Food writing. Were you thinking about food writing when you were in elementary or middle school?
I was not.
I wasn't either. I was just writing really probably bad poems in my composition book. So I think board membership is so important. Be on a board. Be on a board because it's important that creative voices are a part of the decisions that get made in this city.
And you can also, in that role, act as a form of a check or a balance on whatever the organization is doing. Like, I always think about that quote from Barack Obama where he says, "Don't boo, vote." Like, this is sort of your version of that. Like, if you feel a certain way, you got to kind of get out there and make your point of view known in that space.
You have to. There's a quote from a rapper that I love, T.I., and he says, "Bust a move, then, partner." You gotta bust a move. Like, you have to get up. You cannot just do the lip service thing online. Like, you've got to get up and bust a move.
Yeah, it really does take getting out there with a clipboard, and it's not always sexy, and it's not always easy.
It's not. It's literally not sexy at all. A lot of the bigger movements I've seen, like even just the talking about the budding of the Black Arts District, it was a clipboard. Yeah. It was just a clipboard and a woman getting names. And I think people miss that, especially in a world where I'm in storytelling, where sensational stories sell more.
They sure do.
They get views more. So it's like that's how our internet works. That's how our media works. And it's hard to not want to do things that aren't shiny at first, but it's not going to be.
Let's talk about that, because I think that's tough when you're going up against competition and sometimes money getting poured into certain outlets that overpower stories that we really should be hearing and we really should be amplifying. Do you ever feel like it's this David and Goliath situation where you're outnumbered or you're outgunned? Like, how do you...
Yeah, it is that kind of a situation. We are outnumbered and we are outgunned. There aren't... It's hard because it's like you don't even want to say it.
Yeah.
Because it feels like it breathes more truth into it, but it's kind of the situation we're in. Like, there are people who want to do good.
Yeah.
But there are so many more people that can't see that it's bad.
I know. That is really the concern, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard to even sort of wrap your mind around or even like pontificate about, because it's like you want to do good storytelling and you want to do good in the world. And there are times where that's not gratifying. There are good stories and good things happening, but all anyone wants to hear is about the bad.
Yeah.
All anyone wants to harp on is the bad. I've been there. Like, again, I'm working in city government. I go to City Hall most of my week. I've been there at the press conferences where there are outlets and media where Mayor Scott might be announcing that we're experiencing historic lows when it comes to homicide in Baltimore City, when it comes to violent crime, public safety is better. You've got documentaries like The Body Politic that show Mayor Scott in his first term talking about gun violence reduction strategy and how no one believed in it. And now the numbers are there to prove it. And you still got people, naysayers and cynics, who will question that.
Yeah, there's always a but.
There's
right?
always a but.
It's like, yeah, that's cool, but.
But what do you mean? That was like 8 years of work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not 8 years yet, but, you know, there was a number of years of work that went into that kind of a thing. Or you think about neighborhood heroes like, you know, Erica Bridgeford and, you know, what was formerly Baltimore Ceasefire and is now Baltimore Peace Movement, and what it looks like to sort of create movements that are meant to do good in the world, and how people will still sort of want to just see the bad.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like an epidemic, I would say.
Yeah.
I think it's like actually, and I am not a doctor and wouldn't pretend to be, but something's wrong.
Dr. Stewart, something is wrong.
Something's wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, something is wrong. And it gets me down sometimes too, because the stories that we try to tell here, I try my best to go out there and find stories of people who are doing their thing for the right reasons and making contributions to the community. Sometimes that stuff isn't what's getting the most likes or the most shares.
No.
But I think there's still important words that we need to hear. This is terrible, but it almost feels to me like sometimes you kind of got to like eat your vegetables. Like there's some nutritional stuff out there, and it's maybe not as sweet as some of the other stuff that's out there, but it doesn't mean that you don't need it as a part of sort of a balanced world view. Yeah. Right? I don't know.
No, you do know. You do know. And I think, yes, like I like to find and seek those things out. Like, I think it's fun to sort of find the things that are real and that feel good. You know, even when I go back on this podcast and I listen to episodes with like Dion Moses and listen to her talk about her work, you know, with Tom Miller, and, you know, listen to episodes with like Leslie from Chesapeake Shakespeare Company, whose shows I go to all the time. Like, it makes me feel like I'm in a pleasant place.
Right.
It makes me think about the things that are actually happening. And the things that are actually happening is that we have thriving theater in Baltimore City.
Yeah, that's actually happening.
That's actually happening, right?
Yeah.
We have like these collections. I went to the Lewis Museum. I became a member of the Lewis Museum this year because I'm such a fan of the programming they're doing. The marketing and comms that they're doing, the storytelling that they're doing is amazing.
Yeah,
to see them get over, there's a museum in Baltimore City, in downtown Baltimore, that has over like 20K followers. Yeah. You know what I mean? People are into what they're doing. Like, people are nerds. Yeah. As much as we don't want to admit it. And I got this amazing tour of their collection, the things that aren't out on the floor, by their curator, Imani. And what an amazing collection. There's everything from like manifestos from ships to Billie Holiday's piano that I got to touch in Baltimore City.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like there's real things, real good things that are happening.
Real good things.
Real good things. Yeah.
So I'm thinking about this partially because of your work with younger people, but wanted to get your take. Because I know that not just the way that we're telling stories is important, but who is telling stories is also important. So can you talk about fostering the voices of the youth
Yeah.
who are going to, at a certain point, have the torch passed to them. Mm-hmm. And they will be the chief storytellers.
Oh, yeah. And they already are. I think that's what we miss in seeing youth as this up and coming thing,
Yeah.
as opposed to this right now thing.
Yeah.
Because even right now, they have so much to give us, so much to tell us, so many rich perceptions that we miss out on. So I love going to the schools, whether it's elementary schools or whether I get invited to go to Morgan State or Towson, and you're talking to 20-somethings or you're talking to people like that are 13. I have a 13 and an 11-year-old, and they go to Baltimore City schools. And when I talk to their friends, you wouldn't imagine it, but they have this grasp on things that we don't.
Yeah.
They have this creativity and thinking because they still have that imagination.
I know. It's like they're closer to the source.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
So it's like you've got to be with the youth. I wouldn't just call them kids, and you said this earlier, because it's like they're not.
They're not.
They're not. They are humans, and they are thinking and processing this information about what's happening in our world, whether scary or glorious, and they know what to do. And we've got to take their advice. So I think it's very important that we steward the voices of the youth in Baltimore City and beyond. It's very important that they know that they have voices, because some of them don't. Because unfortunately, due to systemic racism in all things North, there are so many people who don't understand that what they have to say matters. What you have to say does matter, and what you're thinking matters. Your experience matters. I think we all, and we talked a little bit about this off the record, but we get into our silos and sectors, and we think there are certain things we have to know. There are certain things that I have to be equipped with in order to be anybody in this thing. And that's just not true. I think the coming of age story you have is the story that's going to serve you best as the storyteller you will be.
Truth.
Whatever neighborhood that is, whatever block that is, whatever that looked like, it could look like having a penny candy lady, on a small block in Baltimore City, and going to get that candy and sitting on your porch and playing games with your friends. You know what I mean? It could look like playing hide and seek in the abandoned houses that were around your way. There's art in that. There's something inspiring in that. There's something in, I was one of those kids, in losing a parent. There's something in failing a class. There's something in writing your first poem. There's something to youth. There's an essence to it. There's a pureness to it. And I love working in an administration that sees that.
Yeah.
And that serves that well, that wants to give youth a place to play, that wants to see youth have a voice, and that sees the value in that, because it won't always be me.
Well, that leads me beautifully to my last question. As the current keeper of Baltimore Stories, can you tell me what is the next chapter titled and why?
Wow, what a question. I will say, as one of the current stewards of Baltimore Stories, because there are many, and I like to honor them all, whether they call themselves that or not, I think the title to the next chapter is We Never Left. We never left. I think there's a big notion or preconceived notion that Baltimore was hiding somewhere, and that it's a gem to be found, or that it was unearthed due to some catastrophic thing. But we were always here. We were always on our blocks, and we were always in our neighborhoods, and our stories always mattered. And it didn't take a me to say that. It doesn't take someone being in city government to say that. You just have to know that for yourself. And a lot of Baltimoreans already know that.
Oh, they know.
Oh, they know.
They know.
They know. And I think that's a mistake people make, is that we have to somehow be validated by these outside systems, or validated by reporters who don't understand this city, or validated in stories that should have never been written. And we're enough for each other in our blocks and in our own little cultures, subcultures in Baltimore. I love the subcultures in Baltimore that were always here. When I go to Holland's Market and I hang out at a clothing shop and cultural hub like City of Gods, a Black-owned clothing shop over in Holland's Market, across from Holland's Market, and they're frying fish there that's getting national attention by food critics like Keith Lee. When I go to Lexington Market and I host my Friendsgiving every year, and I gather over 30 or 40 people from all corners of the city, everybody with a different background and story. I know that those people were always there. And it doesn't take me to host something for them to know that. They just know who they are. Mm-hmm. Baltimoreans know who they are. We never left.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Love it. Alanah, thank you so much for being here with me, being on the podcast.
Of course.
This was awesome. I hope we get to do it again soon.
I hope so. This was great. I love talking to people who get it. And one thing about, I think, you personally, and also Create Baltimore, gets it. I think it gets it for creatives in Baltimore City. We need these kinds of organizations and these kinds of movements to help sustain us, to move us forward into the next chapter.
Thanks so much to Alanah for joining the podcast, and thanks to you for listening. Remember, if you're a creative person with a story to share, please reach out to me at srustin@promotionandarts.org to be featured on the podcast. And as always, when creatives thrive, we all rise.